Neville Goddard, The Law and the Promise, Chapter 14, The Creative Moment. The natural man does not receive the gifts of the Spirit of God, for they are folly to him. And he is not able to understand them because they are spiritually discerned. 1 Corinthians 2:14. Excuse me. There is a moment in each day. Excuse me. There is a moment in each day that Satan cannot find, nor can his watch fiends find it. But the industrious find this moment and it multiply, and when it once is found, it renovates every moment of the day if rightly placed. Blake. Wow. Very, very interesting. Blake, wow. Whenever we imagine things as they ought to be, rather than as they seem to be, is the moment. For in that moment, the spiritual man's work is done, and all the great events of time start forth to mold a world in harmony with that world's altered pattern. Boom! Huge. Remembering, present moment, the now. That's the only moment that exists. There is no other moment. There is only now, period. You want to be convinced of that? Go read all the Seth material and then come back, because if he doesn't convince you that there's only one moment, I don't know what would. Because it really is true when you break it down into the nitty-gritty. But I'm going to give you the summary of all of it. That illusion called the future and that illusion called the past, they're only ever coming from your mind right here. They only exist because you put them there. You put ideas of the past in your mind and you hold them like a pickle in a jar. You just hold it there and you look at it. And that's what you do. And you create the past in a now. You create the potential future in a now, when the reality is that's also a potential. That's also as concretely done. Each moment is shaping your permanent future and your potential past right here. Each moment. Every moment you have an idea or a thought, you're reshaping these fully. Because in each moment, the new creative you who's assumed this new position of being the creator of your life, no matter which way you want to go, you can go this way. You can think another idea. Now you're over here. You have the opposite idea. Now you're over here. Another adjoining idea. Now you're here. Well, those ideas, they shape the way you look out from your now. Remember, you're looking out from your now. We got these guys reminding you. You're looking out from your now. When you're here, the past looks different and the future feels like it's going to be different when you're here. You change your self-concept, you become the new you. Now, to even get there and make that impression, you sacrificed this self, became this self. Now you have a different perspective. That perspective now has a different perspective of this supposed concrete and done past and this supposed potential future. When actually this is still potential. Both of these don't exist. They are illusions of the mind. You're only ever in a now. I don't care what age you think you are. Which age would you want to be and stay? How many vampire movies have been made on that one? We all get to die. That's the wonderful part of all this. We all get to go through that experience. We all get to go through our cycle, whether that's going to be restored again or resurrection like Neville and maybe even graduate to a whole nother one. Who knows? But if you get on with the understanding that there is only now, it helps this whole thing massage together. Repeating the sentence, whenever we imagine things as they ought to be, the way you would imagine them here, not with these, not reflecting, but imagining for the better. Whenever we imagine things as they ought to be, rather than as they seem to be, is the moment. For in that moment, Seth calls this moment point awareness. I actually adopted that term from the Seth material. But either way, moment point, it's the moment point. It's the only point that matters. For in that moment, the spiritual man's work is done. Excuse me. Whenever we imagine things as they ought to be rather than as they seem to be, is the moment. Moment's your only point of power right now. One moment is all you have. For in that moment, the spiritual moment, for in that moment, the spiritual man's work is done and all the great events of time start forth. They start forth to mold a world in harmony with that moment's altered pattern. Now, you're a self-concept here. You're not married. You're single. You want to be married. You have a desire for it. You're not that, though. You go to bed. You make an impression over however much time you want to spend on the subject. Then you bring into your reality a new fiance and you're getting married. That was your desire. You made the impression, and the bridge of incidents unfolded for you and gave you exactly what you became consciously. Then it's starting to unfold for you. That creates a new world that your consciousness is now in possession and occupation of. So everything from your now flows out. Once you change that self-concept, everything from your now flows out and becomes this new past and this new future. They are now looking mighty different. There's a whole different spectrum available from your present moment here than there was here. So this whole new world is because you changed your consciousness and you put it in a new world. You now are in different occupation. Satan, Blake writes, is a reactor. He never acts, he only reacts. And if our attitude to the happenings of the day is reactionary, are we not playing Satan's part? Totally on the money. If you're reacting to anything, if you're reacting to things, not acting with what you think ought to be, if you're reacting to politics, oh, is there enough of that going on? Turn on any social device, social networks of any kind. Good golly, man. Reaction. And if our attitude to the happenings of the day is reactionary, are we not playing Satan's part? Blake writes, Satan's a reactor. Man is only reacting in his natural or Satan state. He never acts or creates. He only reacts or recreates. Reacting is creative. You're recreating what the action was in the first place. So you're just going to reflect the same. One real creative moment, one real feeling of the wish fulfilled is worth more than the whole natural life of reaction. True. In such a moment, God's work is done. Once more, we may say with Blake, God only acts and is in existing beings or men. God only acts and is in existing beings or men. There is an imaginal past and an imaginal future. Imaginal. If by reacting, the past is recreated in the present, so by acting out our dreams of fancy, can the future be brought into the present? Oh, how wonderful is that? If by reacting, the past is recreated in the present, so by acting out our dreams of fancy, can the future be brought into the present? That's the future, brought into the present. You're making an impression to become your new you, married, in love, about to raise a family. That becomes your present here. I feel now the future in the instant. The spiritual man acts. For him, anything that he wants to do, he can and do at once in his imagination. And his motto is always, the moment is now. That's it. That really is it. The moment there is, it's only now. That's why when Freedom Barry in the previous chapter, the guy came up and asked if he could have some money, and Barry says, no, I don't have none for thee. Barry immediately says, okay, how did I want the situation to be? He immediately went, and I think he did this later in the actual testimonial, but it evolved. Nonetheless, it's in the moment when you feel the motivation, you have to just go with what you feel, but you have to stop what you're focused on, the distractions, and just zero in on it. Zero in on that imagining lovingly for what it is your focus is on. You have to stop the distraction and do it. No one's going to do it. You have to do it. The spiritual man acts. For him, anything he wants to do, he can do and do at once in his imagination. For his motto is always, the moment is now. Behold, now is the acceptable time. Behold, now is the day of salvation. 2 Corinthians 6:2. Nothing stands between man and the fulfillment of his dreams but facts. And facts are the creations of imagining. If man changes his imagining, he will change the facts. Sounds nice and simple. This story tells of a young woman who found the moment and, by acting out her dream of fancy, brought the future into the instant, not realizing what she had done until the final scene. The incident related below must appear to be coincidence to those ever exposed to your teaching, but I know I observed an imaginative act take solid form in perhaps 4 minutes. I believe you will be interested in reading this account, written down exactly as it happened a few minutes after the actual occurrence yesterday morning. I was driving my car east on Sunset Boulevard, in the center lane of traffic, braking slowly to stop for a red signal at a three-way intersection, when my attention was caught by the sight of an elderly lady dressed all in gray running across the street in front of my car. Her arm was raised, signaling to the driver of a bus which was beginning to pull away from the curb. She was obviously attempting to cross in front of the bus to delay it. The driver slowed his vehicle and I thought would allow her to enter. Instead, as she jumped onto the curb, the bus pulled away, leaving her standing just in the act of lowering her arm. I can't tell you how many times I've actually seen that. You're like, what? Why is the bus? Yeah, he was right there. Who knows? They must be trained a certain way. She turned and walked swiftly toward a nearby phone booth. As my signal changed to green and I put my car in motion, I wished I had been behind the bus and had been able to offer her a ride. Hey, going that way anyway. Her extreme agitation was obvious even from the distance I was away from her. My wish instantly fulfilled itself in a mental drama. And as I drove away, the fancy played itself out in the following scene. I opened the car door and a lady dressed in gray stepped in, smilingly relieved and thanking me profusely. Remember now, the following dream. She's imagining right now. I opened the car door and a lady dressed in gray stepped in, smilingly relieved and thanking me profusely. She was out of breath from running and said, I only have a few blocks to go. I'm meeting friends and I was so afraid they would leave without me when I missed my bus. I left my imaginary lady out a few blocks farther on, and she was delighted to observe her friends still waiting for her. She thanked me again and walked away. The entire mental scene was spanned in the time it takes to drive 1 block at the normal rate of speed. As I mentioned before, you do this while driving. You're having fantasies in your mind anyway while driving, all the time. Why not put it on one of action, not reaction? The entire mental scene was spanned in the time it takes to drive 1 block at the normal rate of speed. The fancy satisfied my feelings regarding the real incident, and I immediately forgot it. 4 blocks farther, I was still in the center lane and again had to stop for a red signal. My attention at this time was turned inward on something I have now forgotten. When I suddenly tapped on the closed window, my attention at this time was turned inward on something I have now forgotten. when suddenly someone tapped on the closed window of my car, and I looked up to see a lovely appearing elderly lady with gray hair dressed all in gray. Smiling, she asked if she might ride a few blocks with me as she had missed her bus. She was out of breath as though from running, and I was so stunned by her sudden appearance in the middle of a busy street at my window that for a moment I could only react physically, and without answering, leaned over and opened my car door. She got in and said, "It's so annoying to rush so and then miss a bus. I wouldn't have imposed on you like this, but I'm supposed to meet some friends a few blocks down the street, and if I had to walk now, I would miss them." 6 blocks farther on, she exclaimed, "Oh good, they're still waiting for me." I let her out and she thanked me again and walked away. I'm afraid I drove to my own destination by automatic reflex, for I had fully recognized that I had just observed a waking dream take form in physical action. I recognized what was happening while it was happening. As soon as I could, I wrote down each part of the incident and found a startling consistency between the waking dream and the subsequent reality. Both women were elderly, gracious in manner, dressed all in gray, and out of breath from hurrying to catch a bus and missing it. Both wished to meet friends who for some reason could not wait for them much longer, and both left my car within the space of a few blocks after successfully completing their contact with their friends. I am amazed, confounded, and elated. If there is no such thing as coincidence or accident, then I witnessed imagination become reality almost instantaneously. Signed, J.R.B. Yes, it will happen that fast. Where's it at? I burned myself on my finger yesterday right here. I was doing too many things at once in the kitchen. And I had an oven at like 425, and I was cooking, I think, some burgers, and I pulled out the thing with the hot mitt, the hot pad, and I got some, when I'm busy in the kitchen, I'm like a fast order fry cook, man. So I went to go push in the whatever it is called, the grate, back into the oven. I'm like, okay, I'm going to turn it off now and let those sit in there for another second. That's going to be just right, the temperature, because I was checking with my thermometer. I go to push on it with my finger, and I was like, oh my God. Okay, now I already know, go straight, two things, go straight to cold water as fast as possible, because that can reverse. But what I did was the second thing I'm aware of, which I did immediately. First off, if you haven't been burned in a while, it's a fun experience, and the pain seems to linger for a while. I put the finger in the cold water immediately. And while I was in the water, I simply started revising. I was staring at my finger in the water, and I felt the cool, calm, soothing cold water change the physical reaction I was having. I was experiencing the moment before. In the new moment, I started revising. I did it at least 3, 4, 5 times maybe in a row. I revised the scene by seeing myself using the hot mitt again, the hot pad, and pushing the grate back into the oven. And then I felt the cold water. Then I saw myself with the hot mitt, the hot pad, push the grate back into the oven. Then felt the cold water, no pain, cold water. Felt the grate, used the pad again, pushed it back in. I think I revised 3 times while in the water. Then I had to do something else in the kitchen. So I took my hand out. I felt the pain. Then I says, okay. I went and we have a small ice cube dispenser in the refrigerator door. So it's for drinks. So I got some ice, got one of those cubes, little small cube. Got one of those cubes, got a towel, went and sat on the dining table while I revised, I think maybe once or twice more. But I let the ice, that one ice cube, I let sit right on that burn. And if you can't see it, I don't know if you can see it or not, but I let it sit right on that burn until that ice, and then I kind of manipulated it so it stayed on the burn. I just let it sit there, and I don't know what I was doing, but I revised, I think, once or twice. The hot mitt right onto the tray, pushed into the oven. So in my revision, in my new memory, I must have just lied to you, because in my story, I pushed it with my hand, but in my revision, which is my actual memory, which is my new past, I used the hot mitt. So in my new memory, I used the hot mitt. Well, that one ice cube dissolved, and then I used the towel, to dry it off, and then I went about my tasks in the kitchen. I completely forgot about it. I didn't pay any more attention to it at all. I just forgot. This is called going into the Sabbath. It is done. Then I felt my finger later, and it felt like there was something like dead there. Like right now, it's a blister, an actual blister, but there was never any more pain whatsoever. What I did as I fell asleep last night is I revised. I only did it once, maybe twice. Pushed the oven in with the mitt. I expected to find waking up that there would be no blister, but the blister's there, but there's never been one iota of pain whatsoever on my finger since the revision and since that one ice cube, which didn't last but a few minutes. And I remember burning my hand as a kid, keeping my hand in cold water, like in an ice cup, trying to fall asleep before when I was a kid. Burned my hand. I don't know, who knows how, but I know burns tend to last long. But with revision, with taking action, not reaction, I immediately went over to the water that was taking action, number one, but then revising is also taking action, not reacting. I was taking action to deal in the moment with exactly what I needed to act in force of. Take a mental, proactive stance on every matter and see the end. That's the point. Get in there. There is a moment in each day that Satan cannot find, nor can his watch fiends find it. But the industrious find this moment, and it multiply. And when it once is found, it renovates every moment of the day if rightly placed. The revision I did definitely renovated every moment of the day because I didn't have any other pain. Nothing at all. It was gone. Every other moment of the day was fixed because in my moment, my now moment, I went to revision of the past situation, and it made clear over here because the pain doesn't exist here anymore because I revised it from here. If it doesn't exist here, it won't exist here. Every moment of the day, in what Blake is saying, it renovates every moment of the day if rightly placed. There it is. Just one example. From the first time I read your Search, Neville's book, I have longed to experience a vision. Since you've told us of the promise, this desire has been intensified. I want to tell you of my vision, which was a glorious answer to my prayer. But I am sure I would not have had this experience were it not for something that occurred 2 weeks ago. It was necessary for me to park my car some distance from the university building where I was scheduled to conduct my class. As I left my car, I was conscious of the stillness about me. The street was completely deserted. No one was in sight. Suddenly, I heard a most frightful cursing voice. I looked toward the sound and saw a man brandishing a cane, yelling between vile words, "I'll kill you! I'll kill you!" I continued on as he approached me, for at that moment I thought, now I can test what I have professed to believe if I do believe we are one, all of us. The Father, this derelict, and I, no harm can come to me. At that moment, I had no fear. Instead of seeing a man coming toward me, I felt a light. He stopped yelling, dropped his cane, and walked quietly as we passed with less than a foot between us. Having tested my faith at that moment, everything about me had seemed more alive than before, flowers brighter and trees greener. I've had a sense of peace and the oneness of life I had not known before. Last Friday, I drove to our country home. Nothing was unusual about the day or evening. I worked on a manuscript and, not being tired, did not try to fall off to sleep until around 2 the following morning. Then I turned off the light and drifted into that floating sensation, not asleep but drowsy, as I call it, half awake and half asleep. Often while in this state, lovely unknown faces float before me. But this morning the experience was different. A perfect face of a child came before me in profile. Then it turned and smiled at me. It was glowing with light and seemed to fill my own head with light. I was aglow and excited and thought this must be the Christos But something within me without sound said, no, this is you. I feel I will never be the same again, and someday I may experience the promise. Signed, GB. Boy, some people are just in a hurry. Our dreams will be realized from the time that we know, this is very true. Our dreams will all be realized from the time that we know that imagining creates reality and act. Once you know that, I said before, you swallow that pill, swallow that red pill. It's the red pill. We're coming at this from all different degrees of life. Some of us can swallow that immediately and say, oh yeah, I've done that all the time. I've done that when I was a kid. I always do it, blah, blah, blah. And some people are just like, what? Are you insane? You don't even want to know the crap that's happened in my life. I mean, the whole spectrum of us are all here together. But what he says right there is really the red pill of it all, the matrix red pill. Our dreams will all be realized from the time that we know that imagining creates reality and act. But imagination seeks from us something much deeper and more fundamental than creating things. Nothing less indeed than the recognition of its own oneness with God. That what it does is, in reality, God himself doing it in and through man who is all imagination. God himself doing it in and through man who is all imagination. He's the imaginer and we're the imagined. What a wonderful chapter. Oh my gosh, there's too many good things in here. The creative moment, chapter 14. I might as well get off with these first two quotes. They're really good. The natural man does not receive the gifts of the Spirit of God, for they are folly to him. And he is not able to understand them because they are spiritually discerned. 1 Corinthians 2:14. There is a moment in each day that Satan cannot find, nor can his watch fiends find it, but the industrious find this moment and it multiply. And when it once is found, it renovates every moment of the day if rightly placed. Blake. Wow, wow, wow. The moment, the ruler of all time is your moment. And where's your power? Right now, only now. It cannot be ever. It cannot ever exist in these other illusions. These are completely they're not anything. They're made up. They're complete fantasy. And boy, oh boy, is it not easy to invest in those things. Someday you can call this Someday Isle. It's a beautiful island in the Caribbean or the Pacific, pick your choice. And this is Wish I Coulda. Don't worry, yours truly has spent many a time in both those bubbles. But we have the power, now that we're learning this together, we have the power to do this. I take my power back. Right here. Done. Now all my power is expressed right now. This is where I can do my act. I can act from it, what I want to be. I can act from what it is my desire is about, so I can be, I can become. It's not about I will become, it's I am, of course, understanding the distinction, but the idea is I am that I am. I do that in my now. All right. Wonderful chapter. We'll see you in the next one.